Bring me the next shiny new thing. Bring me the next shiny new thing. Bring me the next shiny new thing. Bring me the next shiny new thing.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bad Figcast. I'm your host Brett, also known as Geek Over 40, and with me today I'm joined by Zach. You may know on Instagram as Minifigure Falks. I never say these names out loud. Go ahead and say hi, Zach.
Oh, hey.
It's like I always read them, I never say them.
Yeah, right.
This is Zach's first time in the co-host chair. You may remember him from episode 5 when we did our rant-isode, but this is his long overdue, singular co-host experience. So, as you already know, if you listen to episode 5, he's a longtime collector of customs, and while he may be focused a bit more on Citizen Brick these days, he does bring with him his own personal knowledge and experience as a pad printer. So that will help along with talking with our next guest. And today is a very special episode, as we are joined by arguably one of the most favorited brands currently in the custom market. They just had their 3rd anniversary back in January and have quickly built a reputation for consistent quality, a quick production cycle, and most of all, community engagement. They've been a huge supporter of my efforts to help foster a positive environment, with the most recent example of having donated some of their minifigures that served as giveaway prizes for my monthly Geek Exchange market event. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Jack, but you may know him as Jaka Brick. Jack, go ahead and say hi.
Hello.
I feel like we need like applause and cheers, like loud clapping.
I need a soundboard.
I'm so nervous. This is the first time ever that I'm actually talking and sharing like the behind the scenes about Jaka Brick to this community. So it's a first. Thank you for having me, Brad and Zach.
Yeah, it's a first for us because, currently we've already had Phoenix Customs on, and Adam is great, but sitting over here in the U.S. and Adam being in the U.S., those types of arrangements are quite easy. So to drop this geographical wall, so to speak, and get a chance to talk to an Eastern-based brand. So I think we're breaking new ground here.
Yeah, this is really cool.
Okay, so just from the start, we've had questions from the audience that I fielded through an IG story, and I've sort of sprinkled them throughout this interview. So we're not going to just do a separate Q&A. We're just going to bring it all together to tell that quick, easy narrative. But the number one question I had from some folks is it Jaka? Is it Jaka? Is it Yaka?
Right, it's Jaka. So my name is Jack, right? But when I was creating this brand, I didn't just want to have my name as the brand name, but I still wanted some sort of connection between my names. Somewhat important to me has the name that starts with KA. So I just combined like the two. So Jaka, boom. It was nothing really complicated. It's just two names combined together. So it's Jaka. It took me a while to figure that out.
But you are not a one man show. We in our talks you mentioned a team. Like, how big is your team?
So currently we have around 5 to 6. Because I say around because originally we had 4, including me. But as the demand is going higher and higher, we are now expanding. So our current members, one is our main 2D designer who makes the print for the figures. For most of the figures people see that we release is mostly from him, but not all. And we have a 3D designer who makes the parts. And there is a photographer to take the photos and send it to me, who also sometimes help with other stuff when he's free, like designing, finding references and such. And for our new members, we also have a digital designer who is capable of designing, rendering, and all that digital work. There's also one 3D designer who have just joined our team. And yeah, I'm not going to talk about him much, but you'll be seeing his work very soon. And he's very talented.
Okay, cool. So,
and there's me.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot to mention myself. Sorry. Well, how do I put this? I'm basically the person who really just keeps everything and everyone together. Like I make sure everything is actually moving forward and is moving forward according to plan. And I'm also in charge of like the communication and advertising aspects, such as Instagram posts, contacting resellers, factories, customers, and all that. It's mainly like when you go on Instagram and text Jaka Brick, it's mainly me who respond to your messages. And I also sometimes help with other stuff here and there when needed, like designing, rendering, and that. So it's pretty much a group of talented people that came together, joined by passion. That's how I would put it.
Do they all collect custom figs themselves, or are they just fans of the creative process?
Yeah, they're all Lego collectors.
So
Cool.
I like the idea that you've created a cadre of employees that all can specialize in a unique skill rather than trying to do a little bit of everything, which is great because, you know, there's that old phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. And then basically, so you're just serving as the creative director and comms director.
Yeah.
That explains why your design language has been pretty consistent. You've had the same designer since the beginning, right?
Well, we also sometimes work with other like designers that are really talented in this community, such as Marcus. You might know him as Minifigs PSD, and Lucas, who helps us with the promo arts, the portraits, and for Stud, who we've recently collabed with, and some other designers as well, like Adam himself. And
Right. I just noticed that I went through your catalog of Instagram posts last night, and I was just looking back so far, and I was like, wow, the Jaka Gwen Stacy fig, you know, the render, the presentation, and your most recent fig presentations, they've evolved over time, but there's still that core similarity to them. So I think that's great because it brings that sense of consistency. You know, as collectors, we like to know what we see is what we get. And your renders have always been pretty true to life to what your initial 2D drawings are going to be.
I love that Spider Gwen figure.
It's still one of my favorites.
It really is, and I it's like the side hair printing. I just thought that was so clean at the time. Like it's still, you just did the cyberpunk character
3 years ago.
Yeah, you just did the cyberpunk character too with that like side hair printing, and that's like one of the main reasons I picked that up.
Well, I was impressed. I didn't even see it until I had it in hand, but that little eyebrow piercing that she has that's on the face, I can't believe you pulled that off. You know what?
I like that figure.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And you know what? You can settle a debate with me that I've had with a few friends. And Zach, you might know where I'm going with this. In our group chat, it's natural for collectors to want to compare figs from different brands. And I had to fight this battle explaining that is the Spider-Verse movie Gwen, not the comic book Gwen. Can we agree with that?
Well, the designer we had for Gwen, I'm not sure what kind of reference he used, but when we assigned this character to him, I used a comic book.
No.
Oh man.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I really that's a surprise.
I'm gonna cut this from the podcast. Oh man.
If I remember correctly, that is.
Well, because it has that really cool, unique halftone patterning going on the bodysuit, and that's why I assumed it was.
Wait. Yeah, now that you're mentioning, because the hair and the texture and stuff, I probably wait.
Because it's like the side. It's
now. Yeah, it's the shaved head and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Then it probably is from the Spider-Verse. Yes.
All right, vindicated. Yes. Scare me for a second. I'm like sweating in my chair, man. I was going to hear so much shit from the folks that told me, told you it's just like Adams. Like, no, it's not. It's not meant to be the same thing. Stop comparing. But all right, sorry about that. A little tangent. I do that sometimes.
Yeah, it was too long ago. I can't remember correctly.
So, okay, well, going back, your first fig was Flash, or it was a Flash ring was your first post on Instagram. Then you did Flash. Then you did Gwen. It's quite a different jump in franchises and genres. So, what would you say drives the choice of characters you select, and like how do you prioritize those?
Well, It's pretty much mostly the characters we like. And as a fan of those big franchises like Marvel, DC, and Star Wars and all those, I feel like our preference is pretty similar to what our customer would want to see. So it's pretty much what we like, then what we observe, what the others like. It's a mixture of both. That's how I put it. So we like to have a releasing schedule of a mixture of what the customer want and what we actually like. Because when we first created this brand, the intention was to make the figures that we wanted, but Lego didn't have. I'm not sure if I answered that.
No,
clearly.
that makes perfect sense. In fact, that I'm dropping episode 6 this morning after our interview. And one of the things Marcus and I touch on in the rantisode is the fact that too often collectors get caught up with brands all doing the same character. And what I try to explain from an alternate perspective is that these brands are not trying to build your collection. They're trying to build their own personal libraries. Because a lot of these brands are fans themselves. They also collect, and they either see a unique design challenge, or they just really have a personal attachment to that character, or they just like the design of that character and they want to see it in their style. It's not necessarily them building a fig hoping it fits in nicely with all the other figs that you're collecting from other brands.
Yep.
I guess like for that, and maybe Brett, you can speak to this later if this is going to come up, but when choosing those, like what you're passionate about or what, y'all think would be like a fun figure to make, when you go back and do like a figure like Saul Goodman, I know that's like under the Jaka Light brand, like how when you go back and kind of do some older IP or something like that, how does that come about? Well, it's not just something so recent.
So for Saul Goodman, that one was actually recommended by a lot of customers. And at one point we just told them that, okay, well, enough of you have spoken. So
yeah,
we're doing
cool.
it. But
that's awesome.
But for old characters such as our recent maybe Killmonger, I would say he's not that recent. We did him because we really liked the character ourselves, and we didn't have a chance to make him before, and we're not getting a new figure from Lego, so we just decided to make him. And the Black Panther movie, the second one, was coming out around the time, so we just thought we'd make him, and then Our No More. So it's like a little series between them.
I have that figure coming. I'm excited to receive it. Looks really good.
Yeah.
Cool.
All I wanted to say, like, I was speaking nonsense. Okay, first of all, I want to apologize in advance for making like any mistake or like in English, because English is not my native language, and I tend to make a lot of mistake when talking, especially when I'm nervous, and which I'm super nervous right now.
Oh, no, you're doing great, man.
Yeah, I just want to.
You sound fine. I can understand everything, and
Jack, you're doing great.
You're enunciating better than I do.
Okay.
And I'm a native speaker.
I tend to slur. I like Brett.
On these episodes, I tend to edit my own voice more than anybody else's. And I don't know if it's because I just hate the sound of my own voice, or just because I get caught up in my brain goes faster than my mouth does, so I trip up on my own words a lot. And you got nothing to apologize for.
Cool. Yeah, all I wanted to say was that our preference does not conflict with what we are releasing, because what we're releasing is basically what the fans, the customers want mostly. So we have no problem right now balancing what we like and what the customers like, and which one are we deciding to release. I hope that answers your question.
So you mentioned Namor, or Namor for those who say it that way. I remember when Namor was announced, I had asked about the accessories that were going to come with that, because there were so many possibilities. And Killmonger, of course, comes with his 2 weapons. How do you decide for these characters that have a bevy of weapons and accessories to choose from? How do you decide which ones to produce? So say with Paz, you just announced, obviously he's going to have his minigun. Or with Bo-Katan, you've got the shield, you've got the pistol. I understand there are some iconic accessories, but how do you decide which accessories to produce for which fig?
So we would reference Lego. So we would pretend ourselves to be like Lego designers and say, well, if we were Lego, would we include this accessory or would we just print it? Oftentimes when it comes to things that needs to be molded to be made into a 3D part, we would then design it and print it out as a prototype and then put it on a figure and see if it actually looks consistent with our style in real life. And how we evaluate it is if it will look cool, but not too much as I wouldn't say knockoff, but that kind of figure.
I see what
You
you're
know what I'm
saying.
saying.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So we've had this discussion in the past, not to draw comparisons, but I would say you and say like Phoenix Customs can fall in that line where you lean more towards Lego design than full on custom design, like say Minifigs Factory with their Lord of the Rings, type stuff, with all their heavy molds and giant shields and armors and stuff. So you've got like Lyle Brick doing their historical Chinese history characters that are all these elaborate designs, but then say like your Homelander, it's just simply a cape and some shoulder pads. So
Yeah, that's the kind of figures that I was referring to. And when it comes to parts that we made and it looked like that, we just switch back to printing. So it's
Gotcha.
like a decision made in process.
If you were to like print an accessory on the figure rather than just like have the figure have it be a separate accessory they can hold. I know some people print accessories like on like maybe a pistol, they'll like print it on the waist belt or something like that. Is that a choice you'd ever make or?
No, not really, because
Okay.
for one
Cool.
figure that I can recall is the Punisher figure that had a pistol holder, if I remember correctly, right? And then we didn't keep the gun in the holder because we know that we were going to include a pistol, like a molded pistol. So we just decided not to put a gun in the holder, if that's a question you're asking.
No, that it does. It was that's yeah, just like a personal preference thing. For accessories, I'm like, that's printed on there, which is just a preference thing. But cool. Thanks for answering that.
So basically, to summarize, you do iterative design, piece by piece, to seeing how they progress. You fail fast so that you know right away if it's going to work or not, so you can adjust on the fly rather than just committing to a design that looks good in a 3D render to make sure you're on the right path, and provide that iteration so that you can adjust as needed based on any kind of difficulties that you come up with. We're going to go ahead and go into the methodology of your production. And I'm going to bring up some things that you probably have already heard before, but there are a lot of times, like you said, you're passionate about certain characters, but there are a lot of brands that are passionate about the same characters. So you tend to see a lot of brands producing like, Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans or Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans or whatever. Do you ever feel influenced by what you consider market saturation, or do you ever like want to make something but you're like, there's just too many out there already? And if you do decide to make it, how do you try to make it stand out so that people realize it's worth getting? Because they're not going to be like, oh, I already have this other brand's figure.
Well, there are definitely characters that I want to make, but it was well made already. For example, Iron Man. I loved Iron Man. For a period of time, my phone case was Iron Man. My wall background was Iron Man. I had a bat sheet that was Iron Man. And when I started making custom Legos, I wanted to make Iron Man, obviously, but there was, I can't remember which year it was, but there was 1 year or 2 years maybe, people were just releasing Iron Mans. Like there are at least 10 brands that were releasing Iron Mans, like Lab 9, Funny Brick,
Dragon Brick.
Mountain, Dragon Brick, yeah, UG, and other brands like countless, Hobby Brick. And at that point, everyone was collecting them. But soon after that, people were getting so sick of it that when we talk about Iron Man, they would just be, oh my God, not again. So
My last episode.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when I wanted to make Iron Man, I I just didn't have the motivation and the courage to make another Iron Man figure. And I'm gonna be honest with you, we had plans to make Iron Man whole of armor, like all his suits. Our designer wanted to make him for so long, and we were talking about it, but at the end, I was just like, maybe not, like, because we all know how this is gonna end. With Top Mountain releasing their Iron Man, I don't think we would stand a chance now releasing all the Iron Man suits, but we will release some though. We have our Age of Ultron lineup, and there is going to be an Iron Man, and we'll see the rest.
Cool. What's your favorite suit? Your favorite mark?
My favorite suit? Oh, I don't know. Too many. Mark 6. I love
That's
that
a good one.
triangle.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Top
And-
3 for sure.
I have to say the same, because
And-
anything before the nanotech is my favorite, just because I feel like
Mhm.
it's more real.
I think that's the Iron Man, the kind of Iron Man that we grew up with.
Were
Yeah.
you excited to print? I know you did the printing for Nostalgia. Were you like super pumped to do that classic Iron Man for them?
Yeah, definitely. When I first heard their idea that they were only gonna do like comic accurate characters, I agreed to them immediately that I was gonna help, because it was just too unique of an idea. Ironically, no one is doing right now.
At the time,
Yeah.
They're stepping up and
and
at
now
the
they've
time,
ins-
yes,
and
at
now
the
they've
time.
inspired other brands to start doing it,
Yes, yes.
which is,
I'd love to see it.
I'll keep my comments to myself, but I think that's a great
Yeah,
example
we
of
all know
somebody.
I know what you mean.
somebody came with a great idea, and I mean, now in the past, like say like Brothers Figure was doing classic comic characters for a while, and Ling is doing comic based characters. Not everyone has done, but Nostalgia, when they did those Iron Man, suddenly everyone's like, well, we're gonna do classic Iron Man too. So
Well, the presentation matters. I just felt like Nostalgia came correct with the way they presented that figure in that release, and
the
fact that you
packaging
handled
is cool.
the print right. You handled the fact that you handled the
Price is
printing.
amazing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was
And
really
it's ready to
attractive.
ship.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was really, and the prints are clean. I've got them. I've got both the Iron Mans and I've got the Captain America. And I know Thor is on its way, but that I was really impressed with the price point on those, and I don't know how they pull that off. So backtracking a little bit, so you've got a large catalog of characters that you've created, and I'm sure you have a lot more in development. But are there any figs that, looking back, you want to do a version 2? Like you feel like either the technology's advanced or your design ideas have advanced, so that you're like, we did good for the time, but we know we can do better, and we'd like to try it again.
Right, definitely. There are definitely a few characters that we have in mind. And looking back, we did a version 2 for Homelander. And the first version was 3 years ago. And when we did the new one, we did a comprehensive update from the printing, the 3D custom parts, the design, and everything was an update. And now that we look back to more of those early stage figures, we think that now we are capable of making them better. And one figure in particular I want to do a version 2 of is Spider-Gwen. Funny that we mentioned her earlier.
Awesome.
Yeah, because first it was an old design, and the new movie's coming out, and she's relevant. And I don't know if you guys noticed. I know Bratton noticed, but we are moving towards not having any site prints, because we felt that the site prints were a bit sometimes forced onto the figure, and that they just doesn't look good. So while our first version of Spider-Gwen had the site prints, we want to make a version of her not having that forced site print on the torso, and maybe do some improvements on her hood piece and her hair. I feel like we can do that.
I don't know how you can improve the hair. Honestly, I loved it. But
Yeah, that hair's perfect.
just reprint it and slap it on there. You're good. We did have a conversation about the side printing because going through the catalog, I know some had and some did not. But you had mentioned like for Namor, he has side printings because you felt it made sense. Do you want to just touch on that real quick?
Yeah, because he had that belt, that very heavy belt that goes around his body, and it just felt weird. Sorry, not having that belt on him. We imagined him not having that side printing, and it was kind of weird. And then we just wanted to put it up there and do him justice. And for figures, yeah, we are still gonna have a few figures that are gonna have side printings, such as our Thor figures, because all our previous Thors had side printing, and we want to keep it consistent. We wouldn't just want like 4 of our previous Thor figures have side printing and suddenly the rest blank.
Right.
Makes sense.
No, and like I said, we said earlier, collectors like consistency. If they can put all the Thors together and they look like a uniformed collection, that's great. So on the flip side of wanting to do a version 2, is there any fig that you feel that you've just like 100% nailed it? Like there's no way it can get any better that you're most proud of?
Well, I say that there's always room for improvement because as we are challenging ourselves to get better and better. But as of what we are capable of doing now, one figure I think that is very close to perfect. I think it's Frigga, Thor's mother.
Mm,
I think
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
that was one of my top 10 figs for last year.
Yeah, because I think the hairpiece and that new dress, it's just
With that
I don't
like
think there's any
type
room of
printing to it.
improvement. Yeah.
It was great. And then and honestly, you got the face perfect. You got that little smirk in there.
Was that printed on light aqua? That Lego color malt is. I think it's on. It's a beautiful figure. So, and I just love that color.
I was really excited about it because I've been complaining that I want a proper Thor figure. I mean, Thor, a proper Odin figure for a long time. I was like, I want an Odin figure. I don't want a giant helmet on him. I just want him as he shows up with his beard and his hair and his eye patch. And once I saw that, I was excited. And then I saw Frigga next to it, and I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. That thing sold out fast. I remember when that went on sale, and people just gobbled it up. And I think there's an untapped market for certain characters that people don't realize, that brands don't realize customers want.
Like more women,
more minority women.
Yeah.
There's been no Okoye or I mean, everyone picks a Shuri because Black Panther, but I think I don't know if it's a cultural situation or what, but Jack, you've been doing really good about nailing some of these untapped markets. Like you recently did the Cyberpunk, you did the Chosen One, and that was really cool. And I had not actually seen. So this was one of those weird ones where I hadn't watched the anime yet, so I didn't get the fig. But now having seen the anime and then having watched it again, I want the fig. So I know Mini Legogo has one for sale. I might hit him up. But did you ever? Yeah, well, I know for the folks who have not seen the Cyberpunk anime, please go do it. It's on Netflix. It's phenomenal.
Please,
you can watch it in one day. It's not a very long series, but it's so good. And
please go watch it.
Yeah. So, and you can hear the passion in your voice, Jack. But that being said, did you have any plans of doing additional characters for the series?
Wow.
Like Rebecca Fig would be really cool, or Kiwi. Any thoughts at all?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. I would love to. I've been asked too many times. Well, not too many, but a few times by now, and I would love to. Because I think David turned out great, and I really hope I can reunite him with Lucy once and for all. That's the least I can do. But I'm not sure. She's quite the character to design, and with the show being more than half a year ago, I'm not super confident about how she is gonna receive well received by the community.
Well, I put it out to the listeners in the podcast, either through Instagram or on the YouTube version of this podcast. Leave your comments if you would like some additional cyberpunk figs. And then, in the past, Jack, we've done polls. I don't know if we can talk about this now, but we did a poll, or I did a poll a while back for a fig that got overwhelming support. Can we talk about it?
If you want to.
I mean,
but no promises on how fast we'll get that particular figure completed. But if you want to talk about, yes.
Okay. Probably. So, I did a poll a while back for Wakanda Forever's Queen Ramonda, and I pushed and pushed and pushed and did a poll, and so far it looks good. But other priorities are coming into play, which I understand completely from a business perspective. So, no timetable promises. But that shows the power of polls. Jack, if you'd like, when you feel you have a moment to breathe, which I'm sure is never, I can put a poll up and we can see.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we'll tell you what we'll do is we'll do a poll for Cyberpunk, and then we'll do a poll per character.
Okay.
And then we can do maybe a bracketed tier bracket, face off. See which one's the priority. But
yep, let's do it.
All right. Well,
I want that. It's not like I don't want to. I really want to.
Right, but we got to prove the demand is there.
Yeah,
because this is not cheap, and you don't want a stockpile sitting in the back of the warehouse not unsold, because that's just a waste of money for you.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. That actually falls in my next question, which was going to ask about which characters you wish you can make that you fear whether it will sell or not.
Well, Lucy, there you go. And there's more though. There's more. People have asked me this question, and for one, there's a Netflix series called La Casa de Papel. In English, it was what's it called? Money Heist. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I loved that show, and I loved the characters. I loved the ending. I loved it. And I just really wanted to have the whole crew in the form of minifigures, but then, it's not gonna sell well. I knew, so I just didn't even bother to mention it to the team and stuff.
Well, you did now.
Well, okay.
So moving into your production methodologies and whatnot. So, Jack, we're just gonna skip around a little bit in the production area, because you're talking about taking risks on figs. Was that what's prompted the start of the light fig line? So say Luke Cage was printed, you did 2 torsos. Thank you, by the way. Again, another poll got us a bullet hole sweatshirt. But you did the job, but he had no printed legs or anything like that. It was just the head and torso and the arms. So that kept costs down. You had that light packaging that was really good. If you have these other figs that you're willing to produce, are some of them eligible for light? Does that help cut your production costs, or are these characters you're so passionate about you don't want to cut corners and you want to do the full blown design?
How we determine what characters that are going to be made into a regular Jaka figure or a light figure is that, first of all, we see if this character have a complex costume. If this character, for example, Saul Goodman, he was just in his suit and didn't require much detail on the arms. So we just kept him simple. And we saved a lot of effort, time, and money on him, and so will the customers. So it's basically a win-win situation. But for the characters that might receive much more love and much more demand, we tend to give it all, because we don't want to leave regrets. We don't want to have customers come into us and ask, why does him not have leg printing, arm printing? So we just not hold back and give it all.
Okay. So the light figs, obviously, he said, give you a faster production speed. I would say if Jaka has become known for anything in the last year or so, it is speed. And your transition out of a period of COVID and catching back up to ramping up production has been pretty unrivaled. Do you feel it's fair people compare you to other brands with your speed? Or is there anything you feel the audience should know to make them understand the circumstances of production that affects speed between brands? Now, I don't know the particulars about your factory arrangements. Sometimes it just comes down to paying the factory more than the other guy. I don't know. But is there anything you want to touch on regarding your speed to help people understand how it's possible?
Right. You mentioned that if it's fair when people compare us with other brands, and I really don't encourage that because we all have different situations. For example, there are brands that are established by only one man, like he is a one-man band, and there are workshops that has more than 10 people working on those designs and printing. So there's really, like, it's not comparable. There's different capacity of how much work they can accomplish within the same amount of time. And we, as a brand that has been established for 3 years, we know how the process flows, but some of those newcomers don't. And they will yet, but not yet. They need time to get used to how things work from one stage to another. And I really understand that. So those different circumstances, those different situations makes each of the brands unique, and it's not comparable with one another. And maybe if you give them some time, and when they take their time to get the hang of it, you will see how they have come from the beginning to where we are right now, because we all started from the beginning. So I think everyone deserves that time to learn the process and get better.
I think that's very fair.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
And I get when people are too scared to order like figs from a new brand. And I understand that. Maybe you can wait and see like how that brand is gonna go for their next 3 or 4 releases. If you see there's an incline in their production, like turnaround time or their quality, that's a good sign because they took their time and stepped up. All I'm saying is that everyone deserves like the time to adjust.
Right. And I think this also comes down to what has been mentioned in the last 2 episodes regarding the brand's responsibility in communicating with their customers, or at least the brands communicating to the resellers who should then communicate to the customers regarding timelines and any kind of production snafus that may delay something. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. If you have a problem with the factory, or the factory has its own internal problems, like what if its machines break, or there's a mass quitting, or they have another COVID lockdown, or there's a whole host of things that can go on outside of the brand's control that they had to adjust to. And I think as long as the communication's consistent and people can hear what's happening on a fairly regular basis, I think that helps mitigate any sort of anger. So if delays are fine. I don't think any moderately experienced collector in this custom world knows delays happen, and that's fine. It's just knowing that things are still coming, and the brand hasn't run off with your money or given up on the project. Just little things like, hey, got a test print, send it back for a few fixes. I think those little things go a long way. Or, hey, there's been a logistics problem and they can't find the parts we need, so we're waiting on those. Those types of updates, I think, are great and can even make the most nervous collector feel at ease knowing that there's something being done behind the scenes.
I think being active in the community, which you are, which Jaka is, I think that's been incredible to see. And it just gives me, like, anytime I pre-order one of your figs, I'm not really concerned about delivery, or I know it'll come when it's scheduled and that you're working on it. So it's always nice.
Yeah. In regards to the custom fig process, like, what do you feel is your most difficult challenge from start to finish? What part do you feel is the part that kind of gets you nervous and concerned about how things are going to go?
Well, I would say each individual stage is not that complicated, it's not that hard. But when all of them come together, it's really a hassle. It's the hardest thing is definitely keeping everything together and keep it flowing. Because, for example, 2021, I think, was our hardest time. Our factory back then was super irresponsive, and at one point they just ran away with our production fee. So everything was on a complete pause, and customers were after us with their orders. Designers were not getting paid enough, and I was on the very edge of giving up. So keeping everything going, like if one of the stage goes wrong, everything is put on a pause. So keep everything flowing is one of the hardest thing. Now with the demand getting higher, our designer, like they might not be able to fulfill the demand, as these things takes time, and sometimes there might be circumstances where it takes more time than usual that they complete a design, or they're completely unable to work for like days or weeks. But we can't just leave the schedule behind. We have our factory agreement to fulfill. We have customers waiting for us. So when those times come, I'd have to figure something out.
Just speaking to that, do you feel like at that point, or like, let's say your designer, is pushed to the edge and maybe is working on something, you can't really give them much more. Do you call on collabs, or maybe like people who wanted to collab to bring on a design so you can fit it into the production schedule to keep up with the factories?
Yeah, most of the time we have a few designs available to fill up the gap. But when it comes to times that we don't, we do ask for external help. It's hard when it comes to that, because we have to ask designers, maybe even to have them design something overnight, because we couldn't miss a slot. So that's what I mean when I say it's hard keeping everything flowing.
And as much as I applauded the idea of you having specialized employees that are really good at one single job, that is one of the risks you take of having a single point of failure. So that if one falls out for whatever reason, could be a family matter. That's a hole that you need to learn how to fill. But you touched on something about losing a slot in the factory, and I don't think I've ever directly addressed this on the podcast or in any sort of Q&A or Instagram Live. I had a conversation with an individual regarding, and we'll talk about US resellers and stuff later, but I think there's a big misconception about the brands themselves. So Jack, just follow along for a moment and let me ask this one question, and then you'll see where I'm going with it. Is this a full-time job for you, or is this a side hobby to your career? And the same for your team.
This is a side hobby. It's all a part-time hobby for all of us.
Now, you see, that's where I think people don't understand. They all are assuming these brands they're thinking in Western terms. They think these are all brands that are designing in-house, printing in-house. They don't understand that this is a side job that you do for the passion of the project. I'm sure, yes, you make some money doing it, but ultimately this is just something you do when you have time, and you do not print in-house. You rely on factories. You have to buy your space in line at these factories. When they all this talk about, well, brands need to explore this and expand that. And your goal, and please correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, your goal is not to build an empire. Your goal is just to make some figs.
Yeah, that's what we want. People really think that we are such a big company that we can just manipulate the factory to produce all the figures all at once. But no, it takes time.
It takes time, and you're doing this as you also balance your real world career and your family life and your social life. And it's not about trying to build a marketplace or build a larger share of the market and expand, have a worldwide business. It's just some folks that like comic book characters that want to make some minifigures. And I think that's lost on a lot of collectors, especially the newer ones, who are still thinking they should order like Amazon, where they order a fig and it's supposed to be ready the next day.
Exactly.
And
Don't compare to Amazon.
don't compare to Amazon. And you know what's funny is if you're involved in any sort of boutique hobby about premium collectibles, especially pop culture collectibles like Sideshow, Hot Toys statues, or Mezco toys, in the custom action figure world, these delays are not abnormal. They happen all the time. I actually have a Mezco Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom set that I ordered a year ago, and it's not going to be ready it's already been delayed like a year. That's just the way it goes. And you have to learn to accept that. But a lot of folks don't understand that coming in. They're crossing over from Lego, or they're crossing over from the from UV brands that can churn out things quickly and don't have any complicated molds or anything. And they expect satisfaction immediately. We know we lived in the internet in the age where we can get anything we want at a click of a button. But I just wanted to make that clear that, and I mean, I didn't know for sure, but I had a pretty good hint that Jaka Brick, one of the top, brands in the game, is just 5 folks making figs on the side. And, Phoenix Customs is just one guy making some figs that he enjoys. There are a lot of things outside of their control, but they're doing the best they can. And I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for saying that. And, obviously there are certain products out there that have been long delayed, a little bit longer than they should have been for whatever reason. And there has been no communication for them. Those feelings are justified. I say that as a Spidey fan waiting, Spidey figs. But the reality is, a lot of these things are outside the brand owner's control. Sorry for that little rant. I really wanted to make sure that was clear, that you guys are not
Thank you.
You don't have some corporate headquarters and an office space.
Well, that's the goal that we're working towards, I have to say.
I just said you're not trying to do world domination.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to turn your hobbies into jobbies. That's what I say.
Well, you say that, but then I don't think people want to hear ads on this podcast. So, but I lose money every month putting this stuff together. Okay, well, I'm just glad we cleared that up. I totally lost my train of thought. We were talking about light figs. We were talking about, so we were talking about your speed. There's an ongoing debate about pre-orders, right? How there should be no pre-orders. And then there's the people that are reminded that some people need to raise that money in order to produce. That's why they have pre-orders. And then you ride the fence. You do both. You have pre-orders and you have ready to ship. So how do you determine which figs are ready to ship and which fall into the pre-order category?
Well, so it's a case-by-case thing. First, maybe we probably had too much release within that month, but we couldn't miss that slot with our factory. So we just keep feeding them with designs to fulfill our agreement. But we are just saving that particular figure for later when it's ready to ship. That's how our first ready to ship figure came in about. And for other cases, such as Thor 4 Battlesuit we teased earlier, that happened because unknowingly, me and Adam, we planned the release of the same character on the same week. And when I saw his teaser, I was like, there's no way. And then I went to him and we talked about it. We agreed on something that works for the both of us. And we released something else. And Thor is now a ready to ship. So it's like a case by case thing, but there are different circumstances on how we decide if this figure is going to be a ready to ship or a pre-order. But there are some downsides on ready to ship figures. I understand that people can get their figures early and enjoy them early, but with ready to ship figures, they are made in a limited quantity. So it's destined for some people to miss out.
Right.
And yeah, and for our figures, we never do, it's only one run, and when it's gone, it's gone. So even for ready to ship figures, when it's gone, we wouldn't make it again. So that's the downside, I would say, for ready to ship figures.
Fair enough. Yeah. So yeah, for the pre-orders, you've been doing open pre-orders lately, haven't you?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's great because I feel like it's a model most brands are moving towards, and the idea of the limited quantities to push that feeling of collectability, I feel it's falling by the wayside in some audiences. You're probably the third brand I can think of right now that's doing open pre-orders.
Because we want as much people to get the figures that they want.
Speaking of what they want, Star Wars. Steadily becoming another mainline genre in the premium custom space. For something I said in the first episode that we'd never talk about, I think I've talked about it in every episode. It's unavoidable. So far, you've released 5 Star Wars figs. You released the announced Paz last week. Is this a line you're going to continue, and do you have any intentions of going? Well, you've already gone beyond the Mandalorian show, but are there any other aspects of the Star Wars universe that you like to explore?
Right. Definitely. Star Wars has become, like you said, one of the main line of genre in the custom community. And at first, it was the customers who wanted us to make Star Wars figures. We kept receiving messages from customers saying, "Why don't you do some Star Wars figures? You do such great job on them." And at one point, we just said, "Okay, yeah, sure." And luckily, the brand Cold Blood is a friend of mine, and we go way back. So with him together, we were able to create some great Star Wars design. And we are hoping to continue this Star Wars line as people have loved them. And we've personally loved them as well. Brett, am I being too talkative, Zach?
No.
I feel like
Not at all.
I feel like this is not going to be a good episode because
No,
I've
it's
been
it's
talking
great.
nonsense, I think.
No, you haven't. You've been answering the questions.
All right, so quick pause.
I've been interested the whole time.
Yeah, same. I've been listening to everything, and don't underestimate what is an everyday thing for you is not for everybody else. So they're going to hang on your every word, and
Okay,
you're
thank
amongst friends here, right? So, all right, so go ahead and resetting. Talked about doing Star Wars figs, but you actually released a set. And I think you're only the second brand I can think of that's actually released sets. Lock Mock did a few dioramas on like square dioramas, like Tony Stark Cave and Captain America Chamber. But you created a whole set for the High Ground, and the reception's been really positive. Can you talk about how this came to be, and if you think about doing more sets in the future?
Yeah, let's talk about that. That was my idea, doing that set. Because May the 4th was coming up, right? And we had to make something special. So me and Cold Blood, we were talking about possible products to make. And I just paused for a second out. I was like, what's even special anymore? Everyone's making like 10 custom parts with just one figure, and like they're printing their design. What is special nowadays? And then I went back, and I was actually inspired by Citizen Brick, because they released a few sets as well, and I was fascinated by those, and I just thought of that, and I was like, how about we release a set that's never been done by us before, and let's just try it out. And we asked our designer, which he was really excited as well. We asked him to make the set. It took us long enough, I have to say. It's a completely new new thing, and it took us long enough to make the set. We redid the set so many times, and then the packaging, the designing, the rendering, it was all different. But then seeing the final render, seeing it being released and people are loving it, it's just one huge box ticked off of my checking list. It's something I would never imagine doing, but now we did it.
I don't think anyone
As
imagined you
a-
doing it.
Yeah, as a Lego and like Star Wars fan, making your own set with your own figure, it's just something, it's a dream come true. I get goosebumps even talking about it right now. It's just so emotional.
Congrats on that. That's pretty cool. I feel like I should come clean now, Brett.
Are you serious?
I think so. Just because I thought it was cool that Jack mentioned Citizen Brick.
You wow. This is not April Fool.
It's
Wow,
not. It's
Zach.
not.
This was
I
very
was-
close hold information because we didn't want his DMs getting blown up. But if you want to put it on the podcast,
Don't do that. Don't. I have a kid. I have other things.
Okay, so I'm sorry for the little tease there. I promise you we will reveal what Zach said at the beginning of part 2. In the meantime, I'd like to give a shout out to all those who submitted questions for this interview. I'm going to butcher some of these names probably, but here we go. UK Custom Figs, Sand Green Minifigs, Winterwind, The Bricks Collector, Skip Brock, Shenandoah Brickworks, Pyroness, Jamel's Bricks, A. Cookston Photo, Kyanite Customs, Legoac or Lego AK, Michael Ludwig, Phoenix Customs, Kirby and Her Bricks, Slug Films, Michael Ludwig, Stick Monster Minifigs, Wild for Lego, Azork, Bender Marisso, 1990, BFM Brick, Brick Radiop, DCS Customs, TJ Bricks, Just Burnt Bread, and Darth Bricks. Okay, so I'm actually editing part 2 right now, and it should be out shortly after. I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks so much. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.
I want you on my rack. I want to make you ring. I want you to unwrap. I want to pull your string. Bring me the next shiny new